LA, and we stayed at that Airbnb. And you were like, your body looks weird. Like, you said.
People would always like make fun of me about that, but it's just like such a small thing. But I can get how like it can mean the world to you, because like still like I guess I have like some sort of trauma like towards that. But like now I don't, like I own it. I don't care.
Whoa, kid it. Why you not here with me? Can you break bread with me?
Yeah, I don't even know how to start this one, because it's this person who I'm having on is just like a special guest to me. I've known them for 5 years now, and
almost. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think it was 2017. Yeah.
2017, so 4 years. 4 years. But we've just gotten so close. Our relationships changed so much. And I'm definitely going to have them on multiple times on the podcast, because we just have like so many stories to just like dive into. But this guest is born and raised Austria. I went to a small little town. I forgot what it was called. Say it again.
Nitsing. You want to try that?
Nitsing. I went to a small little
town. Pretty close. Hey.
I went to a small little town, Nitsing. So yeah, we're introducing Sophia Holzer. Do you have anything to say to the people?
Well, I mean, I'm very happy to be on, and as we like just talked about it, I have my own podcast, and usually I'm the person introducing people. So now I'm just sitting here like, oh yeah, great, hey, I'm here. But yeah, I mean, I'm super happy as you just, took it away. We've been through like ups and downs all the way. But I mean, like we're here, and like I'm just proud of how, choice and whatever like has gotten us through. Not all the friendships like survive all that awkwardness sometimes. So
like for those that don't know, like Choice was just like an emotional intelligence like training that we went through. We didn't do it together, we did it separately, but yeah, so Sophia told me about it, and honestly, yeah, it changed my life, and like took me on a crazy path that I never thought I'd be. Like I've accomplished so many things in this year, and it's just crazy to look back. But like the reason why I wanted to have you on this podcast was just to speak about just like body image, and yeah, you were affected by lipedema. Like go into that a little bit.
Yeah, so I mean, it's something that people usually have never heard about. It's basically a condition that still to this day, like doctors don't 100% know what it's caused by, but it's genetics or hormonal changes. And I mean, predominantly women are affected, and literally from like the statistics, like up to 11%. So that's like every 10th woman that you see is affected by that condition. And it's basically, if I just try to explain it really simple, because I'm obviously not a medical professional, but whenever you're affected by something, you're trying to dig so deep into it that you understand it, and you're trying to be an expert and a specialist at it. But it's basically when your lymph system doesn't properly work, and the drainage of toxins or fluid and fat cells don't properly work the way that it should. So just as like the blood system, your blood is pumped towards and away from your heart, and it all functions, like as a circle or cycle. And the same way your lymph system is supposed to be working, as I said, like dead body cells, fluid, and fat cells. So what happens is that that system doesn't work properly, so it clogs. The water is not drained the way that it should, so there happens to be a retention. Your feet swell, and what happens with the fat cells is that they clog and they inflame. Like there's an inflammation going on, and then it's, so to say, and that's a weird word, I always hate it when I read it, but that's what people call it. It's like they mutate. So it's a progressive condition. What happens is just that you gain weight progressively because your lymph system does not drain, which happens through your urine, the toxins and fat cells, whatever, what it's supposed to be doing. So it's like, I mean, what probably sounds more familiar to people is like thrombosis, right? Like when blood clogs and there's thrombosis going on. It's kind of like that with the fat cells. And it's something so uncomfortable because it's so many times just completely confused with obesity. You know what I mean? Like it's so
Yeah.
easy to say, "Oh, you're fat. Like come on and lose weight."
Like just
And
work
that's what
out.
I thought through
Yeah.
all my teenage years. And body image, as you said, like is such a huge thing as a female in your teenage years. It's all you think about.
Yeah.
All you think about. And I did not even know that I have it. And I am one of like the very blessed women that have realized that so early on. I mean, most of the people
How,
or most of the affected women don't know.
how did you like find out? Did someone come to you and say something, or?
So I've noticed that, like the way that it shows up is a very disproportional um, way of your body fat to kind of like, you know, on your body. It's like you have a tiny waist and then like, so to say, an hourglass um,
Yeah.
body, but not by choice. So, my thighs and butt were always bigger. And I'm like, how in the hell? Like, I don't understand. I was always taking care of like my food and whatever. And I have to say that the first time somebody really approached me um, was when I was in LA, and it was my friend there who you also know, and she was like, "Has anybody ever looked at your legs?" And I seriously, I felt personally attacked, like so much. I was like, how dare you? Like, what are you telling me that something's wrong with me? And I actually told her, I was like, no, I just have to work out more. It was truly my belief that I just have to do more. And apparently I'm not doing enough. But then it happened more often that I literally had such swollen legs. I got bruises all the time. I had no idea where they're coming from. I felt like a pressure pain. It felt like, my legs are constantly pulsating. It's so heavy that I started Googling, Dr. Google is your best friend. And then all the symptoms kind of led to that one condition. And I just decided to see a specialist, and literally took him 2 minutes to go through all the symptoms that you check. And it was pretty obvious.
And like, I can't even get that, like, understand that feeling as a guy and just like an athlete, because like when I was such a like judgmental person, and I would constantly be
Oh,
like,
yeah.
oh, like they're like this, they need to do that, and it was like all coming from just like insecurity and like how I was like really feeling on the inside. So when you like heard that you had been affected like by lipedema, like did you feel like, what did you feel like you could do, or did you feel helpless in a way?
It's honestly a good question because there's two sides to that answer. Because on the one side, I felt extremely relieved because I was like, okay, it makes sense. Like and most of the affected women, have been going through so many diets and exercises and like everything that you can possibly imagine, and still blaming themselves because, like that's how it works, right? Like you work out, you watch your food and your nutrition, and you're going to lose weight if you want to, but it's just not how it works. And so it's just so not understandable. But then it was kind of like the answer to that pain, quote unquote, that I was going through. And at the same time, it never goes away, like that. You'll always have that. You'll always have to go to treatment, whether that's conservative treatment or surgeries that are extremely expensive and unfortunately are not paid by healthcare, not even in Austria. And so it has two sides. On the one side, I'm relieved knowing it. And on the other side, I'm like, ugh, this crap can come back anytime I'm going through like intense hormonal changes, which is why usually comes during puberty, pregnancy, or menopause, So yeah, there's like two sides to that. But of course, like having answers usually is a lot better than uncertainty. That's also why last year, I'm sure you remember, but that's when I got like all my courage together and I did like a video and I actually posted it. And then I was surprised by how many people have reached out.
Yeah, I'm gonna link that video in the
Oh my
description.
gosh.
Um,
Yeah.
But just to give like more awareness about it, because I remember when you were telling me, I almost felt like, not that it wasn't real, like what you're going through, but had no clue. I was not aware of this like at all, and I feel like yeah, it's something that needs to be like spoken about and just like acknowledged, because do guys go through that too? Are like guys affected by it?
There's there's a form
Yeah.
of lipedema in men, and it actually shows as man boobs, but it's extremely rare.
Oh, okay.
Um, and of course, I haven't dealt with that to the extent that I dealt with my own lipedema and like females, but it's, I think, and I'd have to check, but I think it's about like what, 2%
That's a
or
percent.
so.
I know, like,
Yeah. So a minor percentage. Not saying that that's not terrible either, because I mean, honestly, like, of course, if you have man boobs and you don't want to have man boobs, that sucks too. It's
yeah.
it's just, yeah. And I mean, I appreciate that you as a guy, actually want to talk about that, and that's what, like, truly, I appreciate it, because that's so rare. Because as you say, if you're an athlete and you're just used to, burning your calories and you tone your body and you see your progress and whatever you're doing, like, it works, it doesn't make sense to you that there's something where all those things don't work, don't make a difference. Biologically, you don't think it makes sense. And as long as you're not affected, I get you. You know what I mean? If I wasn't affected and I'd never have to deal with it, I'd be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Go in the gym,
Yeah.
That's what, that was my approach to myself, even.
Yeah, that's
So,
scary to think of. I know some guys like struggle with gyno. I think it's called gyno, the like man boob thing. There's this famous TikToker. I forgot what his whoever he is, but he had like a surgery for that because he like felt insecure. And if you had to like look at him, you'd be like, "What is he talking about?" It's just like a little bit like the one side of his chest was a little bit more like plush, and it looked bigger. But honestly, for me, like, yeah, I haven't had to like deal with anything like that. I've like been blessed like with genetics, with my parents, and I think sometimes like people look at me and they're like, "Oh, you're so healthy," but honestly, this is like the year I've honestly been like not going to the gym as much as I should be, and like doing my walks, like physical activity. It's been a lot more like mental stuff. So someone looks at me, they're like, "Oh, like you look so much bigger," and like all this stuff. But to be honest, I'm not like that much healthier, and I think it's so lucky because I don't eat healthy and I don't like do these things, but people like are always judging you on your looks and like that kind of thing when it's just so surface level.
extremely, like, the whole body image topic is so psychological, it's so mental.
Yeah,
um Funny thing, like, knowing that we're going to talk about this, I watched this YouTube thing where there were a bunch of people thrown in a room, different, appearances of their body, and then they had like their BMI and like their body fat percentage, and
yeah,
like those are the things that we feel like we have to label us by, right? Like your weight, what's your weight, what's your height, what's your BMI, what's your body fat percentage. But it's like you have one person that has like a BMI of what, 20, and then like another person of 20, but they look completely different. And also, when you think of what factors go into all those labels, it's complete BS. Like, it's so outdated. You cannot go by that. If I was gonna go by a BMI, I'd be like overweight times 10. You know what I mean? It's like you cannot go by that only. And it just goes so much to your head, and you're right. Like, your health it's a composition of your mental and physical health. It's not only physical. And, despite the fact of how healthy you look, it doesn't necessarily mean that you truly are.
yeah. Because I know so many. I don't know like that many, but I know like quite a few like models that are like skinny, like anorexic, like looking. But I don't know. I don't think that's personally healthy like long term. But that's like what's like pushed to us. I think it's changing a little bit. Like when it comes to like the main, what's that? I think it's Lizzo. Like she's
Oh
a
yeah, she's
yeah.
amazing. Yeah,
And I know like a lot of people like look up to her and just like appreciate her. I feel like there is like a healthy balance of
agree.
um like being healthy because part like because obviously I don't know her diet and I haven't looked into that stuff. but I feel like there is that balance of like people do need to be healthy and like work out, because I think it also, even like with what's going on in the world right now, your immune system would be so much better, like if you worked out and like that kind of thing. Yeah, but just doing it
course,
in
and
a,
your joints and everything, your back, your knees. Like, I mean, the older you get, it's not going to get easier. So the less weight you have to carry, the better it is for your whole, bone structure and everything. But of course, eh, this whole picture of what's the norm, or the standard or something like that. My gosh, so outdated, but it's so hard to overcome, because we
yeah,
compare ourselves all the time. And I mean, body image for females, I mean, my goodness, it's like the most intimate thing ever. Like,
as a girl. Would you say you've gotten better like over the years, like with your body? Like when you were younger, were you more insecure, or like how's that? Speak about that.
ooh.
Yeah, I'm going
Uh,
in.
uh. Well, um, so so my biggest insecurity has always been my legs, as a lipedema. It has gotten better by me speaking up about it and talking about it, because I feel like I've taken away the power of others knowing that about me without me being as confident about it as I am now, if that makes sense. Right? It's still hard because I still feel uncomfortable now talking about it. And then, like, I'm already thinking about people looking up pictures and like zooming in on my legs or something like that, which is completely absurd. But you know what I mean? It's
Yeah,
so and even posting the video last year, but the thought that I had in the back of my head was just, I was so it was so hard, sometimes to look at other girls and see their legs and knowing that they're not working out, that they're eating like crap and they have like no bumps, nothing on their legs. And you're just there struggling, and if there was somebody who understood me or had the same thing. So that was in the back of my mind, like, okay, speak up. It might be helpful even to one person. It ended up being like that. And that was all I needed, to know that it was for good. And these things helped me to get more confident in my body, because, it doesn't define me of who I am. But it's, yeah, when I was a teenager, it was definitely a thing. Like taking off my pants to go to the pool with
Jesus.
friends, it was a no-no. Like
Yeah,
I'd be the one coming up with some type of excuse to not having to go to the pool. It's like, nah. And of course, then there's this whole topic of the intimacy when you have your first boyfriend or whatever. It's like you're exposing yourself and your biggest vulnerability. And, it's not comfortable. But at the same time, I always embrace, the discomfort. At least I'm trying to, because I know that's basically where the growth happens. It's not always really where I like to go. But
yeah.
yeah.
I just want to, yeah, just congratulate you, because I remember when you were doing that video, it just took so much courage, and you're like, should I do it? Should I not do it? And yeah, I'm just like proud of you, like for doing like that video, because I know that was just like a huge like step in like owning, what I say, your condition, or just,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
your condition.
Basically. And
And
still, I am really blessed. I have to say that, because there's so many stages that are a lot worse. There's like stage 1 to 4, if I'm not mistaken. And I was like between 2 and I think like beginning of 3, maybe. So that's mild, compared to some others. So
and also, yeah, looking at you like now, obviously I don't know I haven't seen you like in a year, but like last year when I saw you, yeah, you look perfect. If yeah, and I know
oh wow. You're like,
not to like overly like again like go to like judging in that way, but yeah, I think you look fine. And
thank you. I have to say something now because you were the one also making a comment at some point. I'm gonna call you out on that because I
okay, yeah,
remember.
wait, I remember the first thing I said. The first thing I said, I hadn't seen you in like a year, probably a year and a half or whatever it was. And the first thing I said was like, "Oh, you're so skinny," or something like that.
Oh, I didn't mean that.
Oh,
Didn't mean that. I meant
call me
when
out there,
I
like, call me out. I probably said so much. more crazy stuff. But call me out
when
there.
I did not have the surgery yet, and when I didn't even know that I had it back in 2017, right before I left LA, and we stayed at that Airbnb. And you were like, your body looks weird. Like, you said that blatantly like that. I told you before.
I
Don't you
remember,
remember?
I remember now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you probably just said it like so randomly, but those are the things, that burn in your soul. Like, I mean, I've heard so many things and like name calling, and I'm like, the turned around cornetto and blah blah blah, because like cornetto is like this.
Oh
So
yeah.
then they told me I'm like turned around, so I look like this because I'm like skinny on top, skinny but like tiny on top, and then all those crap. I have a brother. It was his, biggest joy to make fun of this, but you don't know what happens in a
Yeah.
person's mind, and it's yeah, it's not so cool. Really not.
Yeah. And I guess what I want to say, I'm sorry, because it's just like as a, especially in that like phase of like how young I was just so oblivious to just like so many things, and just like growing out of that. But going back to like what you were saying, like going to the pool. I remember I used to go to the pool, and my big like one of my biggest fears, I can swim. I beat the stereotype. But
Okay.
that was my biggest fear. But I have an Audi belly button, and people like always make fun of me, and they're like, "Oh, like push the button." Like,
Oh, the one that comes out?
yeah, yeah, an Audi belly button, and people would always like make fun of me about that. But it's just like such a small thing. But I can get how like it can mean the world to you, because like still like I guess I have like some sort of trauma like towards that. But like now I don't, like I own it. I don't care. Like yeah.
And and that's the power in it. But in order to get there, to like owning this insecurity that for some people literally make up their whole life, that's, my goodness, that took me years, like years, and I'm still not there. Like you said, I was pushing this video last year away for months. I was recording myself through every surgery that I had. I've had 5, and I have to have one in 2 months. That crap doesn't stop, and it's so annoying, and I was recording myself because I was intending already to do something like that. But then it took me, I mean, it was last year in May that I did it. I was diagnosed in October 2018 and had my first surgeries in April 2019. So from diagnosis to publishing that video, it was like 1.5 years. In my head now, that actually seems pretty like fast, but still, like, it's not just like a click away where you're like, all right, I'm just going to expose myself to I don't know how many thousand people, and I'm not the only person thinking like that.
Yeah,
But
and
yeah.
it's brave. Yeah, it's so brave again, like doing that. Would you say like now, like you said, you're going on your you said 5th surgery. Do you feel like you're have just like accepted that you have to, like, this is gonna be with you forever,
Oh.
or is it still hard? Like each surgery,
Um,
scary.
I'd say 70% accepted, 30% mad. Like, I'm like, okay, that's it. I can't change biology. I can't change things that are just the way that my body has decided to be. But yeah, it is frustrating because it comes with a lot of other different things, like it impacts my workout routines. I can't, or am not supposed, or I'm advised not to do anything that's high impact, like jumping, like running isn't that good. Because the thing is that my skin tissue is just very loose. It's just not very tight, you know. That's the problem, because usually if your lymph system doesn't properly work, your muscle pump actually helps you out. So, in order to transport all the fluids, your muscle pump would go like this
Yeah.
in order for things to move. But since my skin tissue is so soft, like there's nothing that kind of pressures against it, because there's nothing that holds it. It kind of goes like this.
Like, yeah.
So every impact sport, like jumping jack, whatever, it's not good. So that's affected. Whenever I fly, I need to like give myself shots so my feet don't explode. I have to wear compression and like all those things. It's grr.
Do
and
you
the
know?
surgeries are expensive. It's
Yeah. Would you say it hurts like your joints, like feel that those cells? Because I'm like wondering if there's like a professional sports like woman like with this condition. I'm sure there has to be.
I don't know, honestly, that I have no idea about.
Yeah.
I haven't been like I have not been in a as progressive state to where my joints will be heavily affected. Again, I'm extremely young for somebody who's been diagnosed with it. Usually it's around your, 40s or 50s or so that
Yeah.
females find out, and then it's hard to kind of take care of it to an extent that I'm blessed to experience now because it's not as terrible yet.
I
What
remember
about you?
when I was like searching it up on Google. So there's lipedema, and lipedema, and then what's the other one that's like similar? It's so similar.
So you're talking about lipedema and then lymphedema. So
Lymphedema.
lymphedema it's very similar. The difference is basically that with lymphedema, it predominantly, and again, not a medical professional, yada yada yada, um, predominantly affects your lower legs, and that's all water. So that's mostly water. It doesn't cause, I mean, sometimes it probably does, the inflammation of your fat cells, right? So with lymphedema, that's when you usually see it on older people whose legs are extremely like swollen and just full with water, usually turn really red, and then it looks like just like poles, you know you
Yeah.
probably have seen it before, but you just haven't really been aware. And with lipedema, that's where usually it starts in your upper thighs and like your buttocks, um and where you get this extreme hourglass figure where your top is kind of tiny, and then you have a really disproportionately huge lower body, and then that obviously varies, stage 1, 2, whatever.
Very strange. Interesting. I
There you
want to
go.
like switch the topic like completely. So
Yeah.
I think this is going to be a mix too of, because I want to speak about just like au pairing too. So I know
Hmm.
you did that when you first came like to the States. Like what just like drew you into coming?
I think it was, so I basically just wanted to leave Austria after I graduated. That was probably my main incentive to like go away, travel around. And the thing is, I always loved the language English, and I wanted to go to the US. And so I joined the program, and it was just perfect for me because I loved kiddos, preteens, and wanted to travel. So that kind of fell into my hands. And that's basically how the US became my second home. I extended my stay from 1 year to 1.5. Lived in LA then. So that was quite of a difference between the Midwest, because I was in Missouri and then I went to LA, also where you and I met. Um, and I don't know, I just kind of created so much personal connection to that country, and also kind of grew a little bit of a network, right? Because I just always loved to engage with people, and I was just not only between au pairs and talking German and all that, because I mean every au pair experience is different, but I was trying to make the most out of it, and definitely did. It was a domino to whatever happened after. um but America itself, I think it was just, it's the typical selling the dream. When I was 19, I
Yeah.
was like, gotta go there because, everything's just perfect over there.
Like, is that from like watching movies and just like that exposure?
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Because I mean, there's so much. I mean, all the American movies, of course, all the Hollywood productions, everything, like all the blockbusters is the same here in our movie theaters. It's not really different. So I was young. Like, yeah, I mean, I'm still young. I'm talking like I'm a grandma, but it's like I haven't seen the world at that point, and I wanted to, and like my first stop happened to be the US. So yeah, but of course I was culture shocked. Like the first time that I saw like a gallon of milk somewhere, I was like, my goodness, like how many cows had to, have to give their milk for that? And it's, I mean, random things. everything bigger, of course, and the dimensions and distances. I was just like, oh, holy guacamole.
Um, yeah, I remember like meeting you for the first time, and I'm like, no ways you're from America because you did not have like an accent at all. I think it just came out like occasionally. Even now, I'm sure if people like listen to you, they wouldn't think you're from another country. And was your
I
English
always have
like,
to prove it.
yeah, was your
I
English
always have to prove it with a German word.
was your English good in Austria too? Did you have an accent? I'm sure you did. You had to have an accent in Austria for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. So, when you apply to being a parent, you have to
Yeah.
record a video. And that was like half a year before I left. And I mean, I dare to say that I had a pretty decent English. Um, but I go back and I listen to this video and
You have to send me that video now.
I mean, I can send it to you, like you can kind of like put a little, part of it. I don't know how you'll do
Yeah.
it, but it's funny. Like it's not that terrible. It's really not that terrible, but I definitely did have a stronger accent than I have now.
Hi, my name is Sophia. I'm 18 years old and I'm from Austria. I live in a small village called Nitzing, which is close to Vienna.
Even like
Yeah.
I remember like going into your like small little town. It's not honestly it's not that like small and like little. It's like it's still like pretty big. But
Cowtown.
yeah, cow town, basically. And just the air, like when I landed in Austria, just the air like hits you so different. It's so fresh. Um First thing I eat was what was it was that it was like
Oh,
cow.
I think I gave you a Leberkäse. That's like a roll, and then there's horse meat inside. Is that what I gave you?
Yeah, yeah. And like,
It sounds so disgusting.
yeah,
But
you're like, try
when
this.
when I used to eat meat, I loved it. Like it's a very typical thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, that was a super cool experience. Not every person hops across the big pond to stop and see a friend. So that was definitely a very fun experience. And of course, if you've never been to that small country as Austria, I'm sure that it was new. I mean, what were like, I remember you mentioned some things that were odd to you, but I mean,
I just
okay, the size of Austria is probably half the size of Missouri, and like we have as many people as LA County, just to give, a little bit of a comparison. And I mean, you kind of grew up in way bigger cities.
yeah. How was it for me? I think I was just like so young, and I had traveled before, and there were so many. I think my mom was like, "Oh, like honestly, my mom not so much. My grandma was like more worried. She was like, "Oh, be careful, like people being racist and like all these things." And I like I get there, and like people were obviously staring because they're not like used to like a black American, and obviously I'm like dressing I dress like an American too. So everyone was like staring a lot. I would say that, but people were
Really?
so like welcoming, so
Yeah.
welcoming, and they just like wanted to speak to me, um, in a way. And I'd ask for like
Oh,
directions and everything, and people were just so nice. Your like the architecture and just your history, like culture was so cool to learn. And
yeah, that I have to say, like Europe is very rich in culture and history.
yeah,
That's what I do love about Vienna a lot. It goes back eons.
and honestly,
So
it felt like pretty diverse. There were a lot of like Middle
yeah,
Eastern people. Um,
definitely.
yeah,
I mean, of course, we're small. Yeah, we're probably rather conservative country, with like old
yeah.
beliefs and whatever, like old people in their villages. But Vienna is a very diverse city, and there's a lot of different people, a lot of young people. So it's not like that all Austria just looks like a farm on top of a hill, with like a cow somewhere. That's not that's a wrong stereotype.
Completely. Even going into the forest, and we you were telling me the markings. were like from
Uh-huh.
World War One and
Uh-huh.
like, two. That
Yep.
was just like so interesting and just like kind of cool in a way because I've never like been exposed like to anything like that. And I think, well, we both know, but like traveling just grows your mental so
Yes.
much. And I have this like one video. I think maybe I'll play it. But I was like in the streets of like Vienna, like had just left my hotel. What was my Zieglergasse or something like that? Yeah.
Zieglergasse, yeah. Right off of Mariahilferstraße, which is like a very nice area to stay. So you chose a good spot.
Yeah, but I was there recording this video like myself, and I was just like, yeah, just like never stop dreaming and just like traveling and believing in myself. I'll add the video here too.
Stop dreaming. Just be you, bro. Future for your future self. Look back at this in like 3 years, some shit. Yeah.
But it was just like so cool because that was my first time. Honestly, I traveled before that, but my first time traveling by myself, like completely. And it was like, I don't know, I wasn't like scared. I just like felt
But it's new.
like,
It's some type of uncertainty that, when you experience it the first time, it's like it's new.
yeah. So going back to like you, when you like came to the States, like what did people tell you about like stereotypes or like anything like that?
About Europe.
No, about the States. So when you came to the States, when you were coming to the States, did people like prep
So
you
then
or
people
anything?
from home like trying to prepare me, or whenever
Yeah.
I came and
Yeah.
Americans were talking to me
No, people from Europe like trying to
back
prepare
home.
you.
Oh, that I'm gonna be super fat when I get back. Like, just to be as blunt and like honest, it was
Yeah.
literally because also au pairs were talking about this, right? So whenever before you leave, you go through a process with interviews and like a meeting and stuff like that, just to kind of, adequately prepare you. And you also have ambassadors who were au pairs and talk about it. And literally half of them were telling us, be careful about the food because it has so much artificial like flavoring and sugar and fat, like you're gonna gain so much weight. So I was petrified of that, I was
Yeah.
so scared because again, like with the, I always gain weight where I actually should be losing it. And then I was just terrified. I did gain weight, I think, like definitely, but probably not as excessively that, I could have technically, because I was blessed with like very healthy families. But so that's what people were saying. Then with the cars, like bigger cars, bigger streets, things are more expensive, but clothes are more cheaper. And like the going out with like the 21 thing was really odd to me because in Europe or at least Austria, you can get drinks and hard liquor at the age of 18. And then it's 21 over there. And I got there when I was 19. So I was like, ew, that, that that actually doesn't sound like much fun. But we ended up finding our ways around. And
Yeah.
that was, you gotta figure it out.
Yeah.
Now that I'm 24, I can say it.
No, same. I was
Yeah,
like
those are the main things.
like around it. Even coming, from South Africa, I guess my story is different because my mom is from LA, my dad's from Nigeria. You guys that watch the podcast know, and I feel like I was more prepared, but just culturally, it's so different. Especially like each state is so different. Like LA compared to the East Coast, night and day, like night and day, and people don't realize that like at all.
Oh, America's so huge. I mean,
Even just
again, as
even just like
Austria
speaking,
has Missouri. That's
even just speaking to you, I remember you fell in love with both, like LA and like Missouri, which I found like the most like interesting. I'm like, because I had never been to like the East Coast like that, especially like southern states like that. I was just like so confused. I'm like, why?
I know. You know what was funny? Whenever I got to LA and people asked me where I lived before, and I said St. Louis, they were like, "Oh, I'm sorry." Like, really, that happened multiple times, and I'm like, what do you got to be sorry for? Like, what? Because to my perception, it seemed like that Angelinos, as you call them, think that
And
everybody.
or Angelinos. I don't
That's
know.
what I've been told that LA people are called, like Angelinos.
Oh, okay. I've never heard that. Damn.
Really?
I've
My
never.
host mom told me that like the people from LA that are born raised LA are like the Angelinos.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I've never heard that.
Well, maybe she was being sarcastic. But they all thought that anything outside of LA or California was like hillbillies or like between the coasts. It's like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
So I always kind of explained myself that I did appreciate the Midwest, and it seemed like because cities are smaller, and that's just a phenomena, that just happens. The bigger the city, the less intimate you feel like you are with people. That's just with the population amount. But I just appreciate it in the Midwest, and of course it has its ups and downs, but yeah, I love both, and it always kind of got me back to St. Louis. So I have to admit that.
yeah. Like, what do you feel like it? Because it was like a smaller town. Like people are more like homier and I think more like down to earth in a way. Um, do you feel like that reminded you of home, like too? Is that why you like it?
Interesting question. I never thought of it because actually I don't think so. If I do compare St. Louis and LA, yeah, maybe, but I never thought that way. I think it's also because in general I had a better experience in St. Louis. I was there longer, I was there more, I had a closer relationship to my host family there. I had a bigger network of friends
Yeah,
outside of the au pair network. So of course, like a personal connection kind of like keeps you somewhere rather than LA. I liked it too. I mean, I met you in LA and we're still going strong, but still like the connection to St. Louis simply was stronger and deeper.
do you is there anything like that you regret about your like au pair experience, or like anything that you wish was better?
Ugh, that's hard to say because I usually, of course, as cheesy and cliche as it sounds, like everything's supposed to happen the way it does,
Yeah,
like of course. Um, I think it was fine the way it was. I do have to say I could have extended in LA for a year and not only for 6 months because at that point I thought I wanted to go to university. I mean, I ended up doing that, but I didn't need to be at home in order to get in because I thought the application process, I needed to be there personally, yada, yada, yada. However, my university um, actually pre-COVID already had systems in place that if you're international, you can apply online. I kind of didn't realize it, so I thought I needed to be home, and then extended for only 6 months. Even though I do have to say, I remember that at that time I was fine being done with it because I loved it for what it was at that time. But I didn't want to take care of kids at that point anymore. I'm not gonna lie, like I loved my host kids, all of them still do, but it was just at some point you're like sick of it. I don't want to anymore, and that's okay too. But yeah, so I loved it for what it was. And again, it wasn't just for the childcare for me. I've been talking to so many ongoing au pairs because afterwards I worked for the company for quite a while. I love them and I love their mission, everything. I recommend it to anybody. But the most important thing is to know that it's what you make out of it. Because either you stay at home, just take care of kids and stay between Germans or Austrians or whoever your nationality is and don't exchange with anybody else, or you kind of go out and build a network and kind of like have some roots there and always have an incentive to go back. So the experience goes from here to here.
yeah. I remember, well, at least like at that age, I know we were like pretty ambitious and like we still are. What were your like dreams like back then? Because I know you didn't want to go to school. Did you know what you wanted to do, like from an entrepreneur like standpoint? I forgot.
um I knew that I wanted to come back and just build a business and become a rich. Like that's
Oh,
all
okay.
because I saw it. You know, like in LA, I saw it being so possible. And I think it was the first time that I was truly exposed to entrepreneurship. Cause I mean, that's a whole new, like totally big topic, but it's just not like that in Austria, right? Like things don't necessarily work that way. It's just like the free market doesn't really, you know, allow you to exponentially grow in such a small period of time. So those were the first impressions that I got. I was like, oh my goodness, like people can just, you know, the typical American dream, which usually takes 10 years, the overnight success. But still, like it was the first time for me. So I was like, oh my God, it's all possible. Like it doesn't matter where I'm from. Like I can do that, yada, yada, yada. I don't need a degree. Like fuck that, you know, like all these opinions back home. I don't care. All the academic stuff, nobody cares. However, I knew that university for me was a tool. So it was a hard decision to say, okay, I'll go back and start university. But I knew that without it, it wouldn't have been so easy to go abroad again. So that's, you know, why my degree wasn't necessarily about the academic standpoint. It was more so about having, you know, like smart decisions to kind of have my feet in the water somewhere else. And that, you know, worked and happened. And I worked in the US. I, you know, did my own thing for a while and it was fine. But yeah, back then, I don't know, like if I had a specific idea of what I wanted to do, but definitely was like, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna be an entrepreneur. Like that was the thing.
I love hearing those stories because I feel like a lot of people like in America that have like just lived in America, like I guess I've lived here for a while now, but like we take for granted that like we're American in that way. And there's like so many people that want to like come to this country, and there's like so many hurdles that you got, like people that have to like jump through. Like my roommate's Canadian, and I forgot the only way that he could like come here, or just like easy, like the way he could like come here easily was like if he had a degree. He said it would have been like so much harder for him to come here if he didn't have a degree or a company that was supplying him with his paperwork. Just like going to just like the visa and like that whole application like process. I'm sure that's, oh my gosh, a headache.
Oh my God, that's a whole headache. That's a whole headache. And I mean, yeah, talking about it too much would be probably like boring because you know why it's just like all documents. And that's the thing is that as European, I think we're like pretty used to that because bureaucracy is what makes our country work. And I'm used to sign a document 5 times just saying the same thing, but it's not necessarily like that in the US. And I've noticed that mostly when I was in the process to getting my visa for my internship, because it was like a whole training plan. I had a sponsor. I needed a sponsor company who backs my visa. Then I have the host company who was the company I actually worked for. They needed to set up a training plan. All these things had to be approved from like multiple layers. You know, then it takes a while until you get your embassy appointment, all this stuff. You get screened there again, like 1,000 times. It really takes a long time, and it's also costly. You know, people forget that you can't just hop on a plane and enter the States. It's not like that, you know. And the thing is, as long as you don't have a permanent residency, if you aspire to have that, you're always dependent on some sort of connection. It truly is like that, even when you just enter, at least to not do any illegal crap. You know what I mean? Like there, of course, there's always ways around it, but the question is whether you want that or if that pays off long term. But at least from my experience, it's hard. And I mean, I've had my issues last year with it. Wasn't able to enter in a way that I wanted.
That's a whole nother story that we need
My
to.
God, I was deported. So, yes, that happened too. Yeah, fun stories. But yes, visas are a lot of work.
I'm just like, yeah, last like few questions, but
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what do you think's your next like big thing? I know that's such a hard thing to say, and
Honestly,
we've had like so many discussions about like what you want to do next, and I just want to ask you here to give you that a little bit of a pressure. It's gonna be on the internet, but like, what's your next big thing? So you can like.
and you already know that you're hitting a spot, Oe. Like, come on, dude. So that I think the biggest thing for me is to now stay. To stay here in Vienna and settle a little, because the word settle for me, like, my goodness, all red lights come on. It's like the worst thing for me in my head, whereas it doesn't have to be, because settling can be for a year, 2 years, 5, 10. For some it's 20, but I can change my mind. But the thing is, that has just been so hard for me because I've been on the go ever since I've graduated high school. And that was like, what, almost more than 5 years ago. And I haven't been in a place more than maximum a year, you know, was back in the States, was in Asia, was back in the States, and it's like, I love this uncertainty of, okay, what destination am I going to pick? And I'll go there and I'll figure it out. And, like, it's just, it always worked. And I always had the plan and it always worked. And now it was this, okay, I'm done with my school and I want to stay at a place, because this instability which comes with the uncertainty, which is the adventure that I loved, is fine for a certain amount of years, but I was craving the stability already. However, it's still like in my mind, I'm like, oh my God, if I stay in one place, like, I'm gonna be trapped. And oh my God, I don't want to have to, like, the mainstream lifestyle where I just work a 9 to 5 or so. So that's actually my next big thing, to be here for a little bit and not feel like I have to run from something. And I'm actually really, really excited because Vienna is a beautiful city, especially for young people. Because I mean, I'm not gonna go old, like, not gonna grow old here. And I constantly feel like I'm already 35, having, have everything
Yeah,
figured out, which is bullshit.
I,
But
but
that's my
yeah,
next big thing.
okay. Yeah, the reason why I asked you that, like, on this was just because it's gonna be on the internet forever, and it's just gonna be like something you can like look back on and just cherish like this moment that you're in. Because 2 years ago, there was a completely different like story of like what you were going through, and I look back at that and I'm like, you seemed like you were so ahead of just like the curve, and like your thinking was just so unique, and it's like something I've like always admired about you, and I still do. Um, and I do this like podcast just to have like people like my loved ones like on this podcast, just as like a time capsule, because I'm gonna like be friends with Sophia for like ever, and it's gonna be so cool to just like look back on this
Look back.
5 years
Yeah.
down the line and just like reminisce about like what we did and like what we thought we were capable of, and just grow as people. So I'm glad that you came on.
I appreciate the invite, so to say. We've been talking about this for a while, and like, took a year or so for it to happen. But I mean, yeah, like, just want to throw the love back, obviously. I share the same appreciation. So thank you a lot.
You're welcome. Definitely like more to come. You're definitely going to feature on another podcast or a vlog or something like that. But thanks for being on again, and peace, guys.